During the sacrament of the Eucharist, when the hosts are consecrated, they undergo a process known as transubstantiation. It is important to understand that transubstantiation is not transformation. They are two completely different things. When something is transformed, both its substance and its accident are changed. But when something is transubstantiated, only its substance is changed. Its accident stays the same. What am I even talking about? What do these words mean? What is a substance and what is an accident? Well, an accident is a quality of something, like color or height, weight, density, age, so on and so forth. Accidents exist inside of a thing. On the other hand, substances are that thing. Substances are the thing that makes a thing. Substances are not like accidents. They are not qualities that can exist inside something. Substances are what makes that thing, to beat the dead horse. No two substances are alike. I feel like these concepts would become more understandable if I used a real-life example, so let me introduce you to my dog, Oliver. Ollie's accidents include his coloring, which is black, brown, and white, how big he is, which is medium-sized, and how old he is, which is around 3 years old. Ollie's substance is Ollie. Ollie is Ollie. Once again, doesn't really sound like much, but if you give me a moment, I can explain. There are other dogs that are black, brown, and white. There are other dogs that are named Oliver. There are other dogs that are 3 years old, and there are also other medium-sized dogs. There are also dogs that are all of those qualities combined. But none of those dogs can be my dog. None of those dogs can be Oliver. They can certainly act like him, and they can definitely look like him, but they can never be him. They can never have Ollie's substance. No one else but Ollie can have that particular substance. In the beginning, there was God. God was lonely, so he made people. Because they were his creations, God loved the people. Because he was their creator, the people loved God. Thus there was a circle of love, which we know as communion, and everybody was happy. Unfortunately, this happiness would not last long. The people went against God's will and committed the first sin. Because they went against God's will, a gap was formed between God and man. But this was not your ordinary, everyday Grand Canyon gap. This was the Grand Canyon to end all Grand Canyons. It was an eternal gap, one that the humans could not cross to get to God. And the communion, the little circle of love, was broken. God's love could not reach the people, and he was sad. The people could not feel God's love, nor could they give their love to God, and there was no way for them to repair that gap. And they didn't know that they should repair that gap. They felt like they were fine on their own. So God was sad, but they were sadder. There was only one thing that could repair that eternal gap, and that was Jesus. But why Jesus? The answer is that Jesus is fully God and fully man. But why does that matter? It's a little complicated. The humans were the ones who sinned against God, so they're the ones who kind of need to repair the gap, but they can't because they're human. It's an eternal gap. They can't, there's nothing they can do that would be able to repair that. But a sacrifice needs to be made on their part that kind of puts a Band-Aid over that little boo-boo, over that big boo-boo. At the same time, God is the only one capable of repairing the gap because he is an eternal being, so he has power enough to repair an eternal gap. There had to be a combination of a sacrifice on the human's part and the power of God. So, God became man and came to earth. Jesus understood why he was sent to earth. At the Last Supper, which is the first Mass, Jesus blessed bread and wine and said that the bread and wine were his body and blood. He told the apostles to break bread and drink wine in remembrance of him. The next day, Jesus was crucified. His sacrifice on the cross bridged the gap between God and man. And to remind us of his sacrifice, Catholics attend Mass and partake in the sacrament of the Eucharist at least once a week. For non-Catholics, there is some confusion about the sacrament of the Eucharist. To their understanding, when we remember Jesus' sacrifice every Sunday, we are re-crucifying Jesus every Sunday because we use language like the sacrifice of the Mass. This is not true at all. The sacrament of the Eucharist is more like watching a video recording of your wedding day. When you watch a video of what happened on your wedding day, you remember what happened on your wedding day, as in like you remember the ceremony and the festivities that followed, and you remember how you felt when those festivities or those ceremonies happened. When you watch the recording, you relive the experience of getting wed. In the same way, the sacrament of the Eucharist is a reliving of Jesus' sacrifice on the cross, except we are really present in that sacrifice through metaphysics and things beyond human understanding. Jesus was only crucified once, just like you were only married once. Of course, you can always divorce and get remarried, but that's besides the point. That one particular wedding day only happened once. But the love of the marriage and the sanctity of the marriage is something eternal and everlasting. Jesus' love that drove him to let himself be crucified on the cross, and the power of that sacrifice, which repaired the eternal gap between God and man, is everlasting. And that is mainly what we remember in the sacrament of the Eucharist.